Of the works of Edgar Allan Poe's singular genius, I have very little to say. The public will soon prove what it thinks of them. It would to me be difficult, but not impossible, to unravel his method, to explain his process, especially in that part of his works whose effect principally lies in his skillfully managed analysis. I could introduce the reader into the mystery of his fabrication, paying especial attention to that portion of American genius which caused him to rejoice over a conquered difficulty, a resolved enigma, a successful effort of strength, which urged him on to delight himself with a childish and almost perverse enjoyment in the world of probabilities and conjectures, to create canards to which his subtle aid gave all the appearances of reality. No one can deny that Poe was a marvelous juggler, and I know that he gave his esteem especially to another portion of his works. It was not by his material miracles, however they may have made his renown, that he won the admiration of thinkers, but by his love of the beautiful, by his knowledge of the harmonical conditions of beauty, by his profound and plaintive poetry, carefully wrought, nevertheless, and correct and transparent as a crystal jewel, by his admirable style, pure and strange, compact as the joints of a coat of mail, complacent and minute, and the slightest turn of which served to push his reader towards the desired end. And, above all, by that quite special genius, by that unique temperament which permitted him to paint and explain, in a manner impeccable, entrancing, terrible, the exception in moral order. Diderot, to take one example of 100, is a blood-red author. Poe is a writer of the nerves, even something more, and the best I know. With him, every entry into a subject is attractive, without violence, like a whirlwind. His solemnity surprises the mind and keeps it on the watch. We feel at once that something grave is at stake, and slowly, little by little, a history is unfurled, the interest of which rests upon some imperceptible deviation of the intellect, upon an audacious hypothesis, upon an imprudent dose of nature in the amalgam of the faculties. The reader, thralled as if by vertigo, is constrained to follow the author in his entangling deductions. No man has told with greater magic the exceptions of human life and nature, the ardors of the curiosities of convalescence, the close of seasons charged with enervating splendors, sultry weather, humid and misty, where the south wind softens and distends the nerves like the chords of an instrument, where the eyes are filled with tears that come not from the heart, hallucinations at first giving place to doubt, soon convinced and full of reasons as a book, absurdity installing itself in the intellect and governing it with a crushing logic, hysteria usurping the place of will, a contradiction established between the nerves and the mind, and mean out of all accord expressing grief by laughter. He analyzes them where they are most fugitive. He poises the imponderable, and describes in that minute and scientific manner whose effects are terrible, all that imaginary world which floats around the nervous man and conducts him on to evil. The very ardor with which he threw himself into the grotesque, out of love for the grotesque, and into the horrible, out of love for the horrible, seems to verify the sincerity of his work and the accord of the poet with the man. I have already remarked that in many men this ardor was often the result of a vast, unoccupied vital energy, sometimes of a self-promoted chastity, and also out of a profound, back-driven sensibility. The supernatural delight that a man can experience in watching his own blood flow, sudden, violent, useless movements, loud cries thrown into the air without any mental will, are phenomena of the same order. Upon the heart of this literature, where the air is rarefied, the mind can feel that vague anguish, that fear prompt to tears, that sickness of the heart, which dwells in places vast and strange. But the admiration is stronger. And then, art is so great. All the accessories are there thoroughly appropriate to the characters. The silent solitude of nature, the bustling agitation of the city, are all described there, nervously and fantastically. Like our Eugene Delacroix, who has elevated his art to the height of grand poetry, Edgar Poe loves to move his figures upon the ground of green or violet, where the phosphorescence of putrefaction and the odor of the hurricane reveal themselves. Nature inanimate, so styled, participates of the nature of living beings and, like it, trembles with a shiver, supernatural and galvanic. Space is fathomed by opium, for opium gives a magic tinge to all the hues and causes every noise to vibrate with the most sonorous magnificence. Sometimes glorious visions full of light and color suddenly unroll themselves in its landscape, and on the furthest horizon line we see oriental cities and palaces mist-covered in the distance, which the sun floods with golden showers. The characters of Poe, or rather, the character of Poe, the man with sharpened faculties, the man with nerves relaxed, the man whose ardent and patient will bids defiance to difficulties, whose glance is steadfastly fixed with the rigidness of a sword upon objects that increase the more he gazes. This man is Poe himself. And his women, all luminous and sickly, dying of 1,000 unknown ills and speaking with the voice resembling music, are still himself. Or, at least, by their strange aspirations, by their knowledge, by their incurable melancholy, they participate strongly in the nature of their creator. As to his ideal woman, his Titanide, she reveals herself under different names, scattering in his, alas, too scanty poems, portraits, or rather modes of feeling beauty, which the temperament of the author brings together and confounds in a unity, vague but sensible, and where, more delicately perhaps than elsewhere, glows that insatiable passion for the beautiful which forms his greatest claim, that is to say, the essence of all his claims, to the affection and the respect of poets.